Move this mic better. But no, thank you guys for coming back for episode six, five or six.
I can't even
Around
keep
there.
track anymore.
I'm supposed to be able to keep track, but one, two,
I want to say
three.
it's probably five.
I'm only getting episode. One of our episodes is even up on the one, two, three, four, five. Okay, six. I was going to say one
Six.
episode
Oh,
wasn't showing
okay.
up, but YouTube's being weird. Um, Well, thank you guys for coming in, tuning into episode six. Today we are going to talk about our Mount Rushmore of anime protags. This is very this one is I think is probably been the hardest one for us. Well, for me personally to do because of I guess what my idea of what I like in a protagonist is definitely going to be different from what you guys think is makes a good protagonist and everything like that. Um, Maybe we'll have one or two to be the same. Maybe none of us will have any that are the same at all. What I think is going to be better to do for this one, since we have a Mount Rushmore, is technically four. But I did say earlier that I had one of them is technically going to be two people, but I'm still going to count them together, so it'll still be technically that way. We'll go one by one and explain our person, um, and just do it that way so we can understand like where our mind state or what our standards for a protagonist is. Um, and the first one that I'm going to go with is OG classic. I'm going to go with Yusuke Urameshi,
Mm,
um, simply because Yusuke, at the time when Yu Yu Hakusho came out, Yusuke was definitely the standout protagonist, the black sheep protagonist. He wasn't the wholesome, go getter, all cool, happy, whatever. He's more realistic. He's a delinquent. He didn't like school. He didn't care about school. He just liked to throw hands. Um, but even though everyone pretty much around him didn't like him or didn't want to put up with him or didn't want to tolerate him, couldn't deal with him. He still had good intentions at heart. He just didn't know how to go at it because he was still a young boy, and that's why when he sacrificed himself, it's such a shock to everybody. And then he finds out who like people actually do like him and respect him, and want him around and stuff like that. And it was so much more different than at the time when I was watching anime because I mean we had Goku, Sailor Moon, um, Inuyasha, and Cowboy Bebop, obviously, and all those were sort of not exactly the same, but they were definitely different from what Yusuke was. And I think that's what I liked. It's more that his intentions were he always wanted to protect people that he loved, and he was willing to sacrifice himself just to help a random kid out without even thinking about it. And yeah, he didn't want to become a spirit detective. He still took the mantle and was willing to I guess technically protect the world at the time, but it was more like he just didn't want his friends to be um, killed. And then he was able to turn Hiei and Kurama to the good side. Kurama wasn't really a villain though; he was already sort of like a borderline
mm,
anti-hero.
yeah.
Hiei was a villain. Well, technically Hiei's a villain still throughout the whole show, regardless. But no, that's why I put Yusuke up there because he was different. He set a standard, and protagonists not having to be the cookie cutter, same happy go lucky. I'm going to train and be better than you and everything like that. Um, and then he really did. From him, I feel like he set a standard of where others could start writing their protagonists to be sort of like him. Not like they didn't all have to be delinquents or anything like that, but they didn't have to have the purpose of just being the strongest or anything like that. The standard of like, I want to protect my friends or the people I love is good enough to be a protagonist sometimes.
Oh,
Whoever want to go next.
that's a solid choice. Um, so for mine, the first one I'm gonna list off is Thorfinn from Vinland Saga. Um, to me, Thorfinn is a really powerful protagonist, mainly because, he started out as just a regular kid, growing up curious, he admired his father so deeply, and then the one day he witnessed him die in front of him, that completely changed everything. It turned him onto a path of just bloodshed and revenge, and all that fueled him was rage. And the one person that was pointed to when he died, he was lost. He didn't know what to do with himself anymore. And I thought that was like a really powerful moment because it really illustrates of like if you're running it off of pure rage and hate, once the source or once the object or item that you have that pointing to is gone, what are you at that point? And so when they had his development afterwards of becoming a better person, I'm trying to think of what to say. Um Developing more into a man, into a stoic character, he has truly, you don't have any enemies. It's really the wars are constantly against yourself. And one of my favorite moments was when he had that internal back and forth with Askeladd, when he got to see like basically hell. And Askeladd, the man that he hated and demised the most, was the one that basically was a father figure to him throughout all those years of torment, and really taught him the lesson of like, you can't keep holding on to these things anymore. And that basically led Thorfinn to seek his own path to peace and just freedom for himself and everyone he cares about. So Thorfinn is definitely one of the characters that I think fits on my Mount Rushmore for protagonists.
I respect it. I'm not a huge fan of Vinland Saga because just the pacing is weird from first season to second season and stuff. But Thorfinn does go through a lot of internal um turmoil,
Mm,
and I prefer sending anime over shonen anyways because it is more mature and it is more, I don't want to say realistic, but more relatable in ways
yeah.
because a lot of it's like you're in that space from after high school through just adulthood in general. Um, so you see like most shonen is high school, middle school, high school. So it's just there aren't huge serious issues besides the random villain that's taking over the world, just like the over the top stuff. But in a setting that they bring it down a little bit more idealistically real and make it more, I guess, like I said, relatable. And Vinland Saga does do that. Thorfinn has to deal with seeing his father get pretty much get dusted, um,
Yeah,
and
no, he
then
got jumped bad.
and then having an internal conflict of being taken by the guy that killed your father, who you respected more than anything, and not having the strength or maturity enough to be able to understand that I've got to kill this guy, but I've got to wait for my moment. And him just always being waiting for the moment, waiting for the moment, waiting for the moment, and then not getting the moment and understanding
Mm,
like, oh shit, I should have either I should have forgiven or I should have taken my chance when I had it. And the one thing I hated was him be like, I can't do this because my father wouldn't do this. Like, your father's dead. I don't give a
yeah,
damn.
when he had the opportunity to get him in his sleep,
Yeah.
even though he really wasn't asleep, but still, that was like, but to me, that also spoke to his character because I was like, he has a sense of honor that he hasn't gotten rid of, despite how much he's just enraged by what happened and how much he hates him. He
You know what's
still at least,
honorable? Killing the nigga that killed my dad. How about
oh, he tried.
that? But no, also all like throughout his voyage and every obstacle, I guess is gonna be the best way to say, because they weren't all villains and they weren't all bad or stuff. They were just people along the way to help him develop and grow and
Yeah.
see, hey, this dude's throwing logs out there and killing people. I'm not that strong. I'm not, what I'm saying? Like, hey, if I was on that ship and I saw a dude's head get taken off by a log because he just threw it, nah, not me.
I said,
I'm
nah,
not,
jumping out. That's it.
no, y'all can go handle that. No. But then I mean just things like that, like him seeing the different um I guess the different codes of honor that people would live by in this world. Like
Mm,
some were very honorable, like his dad, but some were also like Askeladd that were, not afraid to be underhanded. And then the mix in between, and then like him trying to understand that the world isn't just black or white. There is a lot of gray.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like, before we get to Josh's character, it's that's the reason why I like the story and like stories like that is because they paint it in the reality of like there truly isn't a good or bad. One side can see their point as good, the other side can see it as bad, but in the end, everyone has their own views of what is good and bad, and there's nothing that's going to correlate them to each other. So it's hard to say. My biggest example is like Gundam. There aren't really true heroes or villains. There's just two sides of a fight. And whoever you orient yourself with is who you deem the good, and whoever you don't is the bad. But there's nothing that really sets the tone of like, oh, these guys are bad, but oh, these guys are good. It's up to pretty much the viewers to interpret how they wish. So stuff like that I really enjoy.
See, that's why I have a guy on honorable mention, but you said you didn't want to do honorable mentions, so we'll leave it at that. But go ahead, Josh. Who's your number? Who's your first? Not your number one, but who's first for you?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, let me clarify, these are not in any
Yeah,
particular
not in any
order.
order. No.
Um, I'll start off with Reiki from Escape the Infinity.
Hmm.
Um, for me, it was kind of like I was thrown off by the show initially because you know how they do, red hair, white hair. Oh, that's the definitely gonna be the protagonist. But the way that they did the take on the protagonist in the show was a little bit different. Um, Reki, I do definitely still consider to be the protagonist of the show because it's still definitely told through his light and through his perspective of the story. But he's essentially a protagonist surrounded by a genius, kind of like with we'll say we'll say a Sarada to Boruto kind of dynamic, right?
Mm,
Sarada is not as much of a genius. I'll say personally when I look at it, she's not as much of a genius as Boruto is when it comes to raw potential in some aspects. And it's very similar with this show. He has been skating for quite a bit of time, but I don't know where this new guy who only has snowboarding background starts going crazy within like the first month of him practicing things out. And so a secondary plot of the story is Ricky coming to terms of understanding that that he has his own set of power, right? When it comes to the skating and being good at skating, but he has to embrace that and not keep chasing after what everybody else considers to be good or the best or
mm,
what's like the flashiest, right? So he has his moment to shine, but I like him as a protagonist because it's a completely different take, but it's a lot more of a realistic take. Because in real
mm,
life, you can be good, you can have something that you're good at, but somebody can be better. And
Yeah.
it's almost always going to be
mm,
that way. And
yeah,
so I liked this protagonist because he understood that. He went through his depressive state of, man, this freaking sucks, bro. I might as well just quit. I can't compete with these guys. I've been trying to compete for all my life just to get here, and I'm not even good enough to stand at the plate. But he found his own way to stand. He found his own set of light and power that makes him stand above the rest. And I like that message there because at the end of the day, it can happen, it has happened, I'm sure, to plenty of us at plenty of times, but it can happen to any one of us that be the case. But instead of, changing protagonists, they allowed him that opportunity to put the power in his own hands for once. So that's why I appreciated that whole storyline and that take on a protagonist as well.
mm. No, that's a good choice.
Oh, for sure. I do like because it's essentially a sports anime, and you can only do so much with your sports protagonist in a sense. There's been some variants here and there, of course, but I think Skate really was one that took like the standard and then put a good spin on it because it didn't really divvy away so much from like oh, I've got to get better because I'm not the best kind of thing like Ippo. It's probably the best standard for sports anime. Still, literally starting from him being bullied to him becoming world or not world champion, but national champion. And then when he gets to the world stage, he finds out that he may be the best here, but when you're on this level, that from here to here is so much. There's so many more layers than it may be a 1% difference, but that 1% is so much more than what he knew he could expect.
Yeah.
And like in this one, like you were talking about, he saw that there were people better than him already, and he was just trying to get better. And he did go through that depression era, like you said, or state, and he was like, "What can I do? What am I supposed to do?" You know, had the self doubts, and then he's like, "All right, you know, just time to just do it. No more hesitation. Just do it and see what happens." And I like that they did it that way because his main antagonist was so much more levels above him, but once he understood what his how to reach that zone, the focus became better. And a lot
Right.
of the times you see in sports anime where like the person's better, and then the person like you're the protagonist, the antagonist is better, and then the protagonist does a montage and just go straight like I hate don't montage sports anime, just do it, and then go into that like I think that's why people related to Haiku a lot. I guess was also in that same sense because Kurosano wasn't the best team. They were essentially the worst team. They were the worst best team, and every time they faced a better team, they lose, but they learn from it and get better. And that's what, and pretty much in Skate, how they try to do it, where he was learning so much, and it wasn't just like he went and immediately just did it. It was a gradual build to a satisfactory end, I guess
Homie
overall.
said, I ain't come out the mud. I came out the concrete, baby.
Exactly. um, See, these are all good, all different, all good, all like I said, we all have different standards, which is good. Because it'd be kind of lame if we all picked the same people. Um, so for my second one, um, is Kazuma from Escryed, which is pretty much my favorite anime of all time, and I'll get into that later, maybe on another episode. But Scried is definitely my favorite anime. I recently went back and watched it again, and I just fell in love with it again. But Kazuma is essentially the same as sort of like Yusuke, but not really. So in Scried, there's a 1% of the population, or even less than a percent of the population, that get affected by gosh, I forgot what they called it, and I watched this like a few weeks ago. But essentially, there's this thing that causes people to get powers. It's less than 1% of the world, or the population. And Kazuma is one of them, and he's just a lowly street thug. You know, he fights for money. You know, he puts hands on people and everything like that. And then he fights other people that have abilities like him, so it's more high stakes and everything like that. But the military of that area patrols them, and it's very oppressive. So Kazuma just wants to stop being oppressed, wants his people to be free, wants to be left alone because they're not really doing anything. Yeah, there's some bad people with powers, but they're handled by people with powers like him or other people on the island. And it comes to the point where the military is starting to recruit people with these abilities, and Kazuma meets a guy who is levels above him, like tons of levels. Like Cosmo is going to do his special ability, like it's called Chrome Shell Bullet, and he goes to hit the guy, and the guy literally like he does pretty much the icing where he just catches him. Like your special ability is nothing to me, and literally breaks his ability. Like he loses his ability for the time. I guess the way they explained it is like he used so much of the energy of his ability, it just went away. And this guy's just like, boom, and then just beats him up and dusts him. They even arrest him and take him back and everything. But Kazuma gets out because one of the guys in there is one of his old friends. They don't really tell you the relationship, but you sort of get the feeling from the interactions. But Kazuma learns defeat so bad. He got defeated so badly, he doubted himself in so many ways. But he was the protector of his town, of his city, and the military was still attacking. So even though he got beat, he kept going forward for them. He never, even when he was down, he would never let anybody know how he felt or how he looked or anything like that. He was always trying. And he eventually starts building up his power more and more. He understands what his ability is because he was just going off pretty much just pure talent. And once he learned that you have to like train and focus and develop your ability, he learned that he was still like at a low level, and then he gradually built up there to the big battle and everything, and then he learns like even though I'm strong, I'm not the strongest, but the power of friendship bullshit actually works out in this situation. I hate the power of friendship in so many animes, but this one just makes sense because it's the military oppressing small civilian situations pretty much. and he is the martyr or the revolutionary to set up and make it going forward. And I hate that the show was a light novel adaptation, so it wasn't long enough. There should have been some more put in it. I wish they would have done like spin-offs and stuff like that. Definitely, definitely one of the best protagonists who doesn't get recognition because it's not just a recognizable anime. It's not big and popular like that. It was played at a bad time in America on like Toonami. I think it was a 2:30 show right before they started to reboot segments of re-showing everything over and over again. But his determination and his failures are bigger than his success, which makes him a better person because he failed so hard and he didn't realize that's because he beat up the low level people so much. He thought he was a top tier person until he met a top tier person and realized he had to do more because he had to protect his people because the oppression was so bad and he just wanted freedom. And I think that's a good like it's sort of like Yusuke, like I said, where he just wants to protect his people, but Yusuke's fighting demons and anything like that. This one's fighting oppression and trying to just be free. So it's almost the same, but I've like there's enough differences between them to where they're not the exact same person, but they're still on the same thread, in my opinion. And that was my number two, but not second in order, probably the low level one
Number
on
two
this
on the
one.
list.
Yeah.
All right. So for my second pick, I kind of went the same route of picking something that meant a lot to me, or at least is one of my favorite as far as the series. It's not my absolute favorite, but it really is up there. Simone from Gurren Lagann.
Mm-hmm.
I
You son of
he
a.
Yeah, you had him too.
Yeah, I did.
Um, I mean, hey, we can piggyback off of this one, but like, for me, he is one of the characters that I think about when I think of character development. From where he started to where he got to at the end of the series was such a huge development for his character. He started out as just a wimpy kid, obviously had his interest in like technology and stuff, and then he had Kamina who was there to basically coax him to be what Kamina saw him as, to let him know that he isn't just some quiet little kid, that he has a lot more potential than he believes himself. And so Kamina definitely has a lot of the uh oh my gosh, a lot of the credit for establishing Simon and basically inspiring him to continue because after Kamina's death, Simon was destroyed. He didn't know what to do. He wanted to give up, but then it was Yoko and everyone else that kind of like gave him the push and just reminded him of like what Kamina wanted. This isn't what he wanted for him. He wanted him to be better. He wanted him to be what he knew he was. He wanted him to be great. And in the end, he turned out to be like a leader, and people looked up to him basically the same way that people looked up to Kamina. And he did like really great things. He had one of the best battles in the series. I'm just saying. Um, but yeah, no, I think Simon for me is definitely one of my picks for my Mount Rushmore because he's a character I think about a lot, especially when it comes to character development and story.
Oh, for sure. I feel like Simone is one of the better examples of weakest to strongest,
Oh
Mhm.
yeah,
done correctly.
Yeah.
Because
I was just gonna get into
um,
that.
what is it now? The manga's main thing for I don't know why. Yeah, it's their shonen pretty much at this point. If weakest to strongest, and now that it's a formula instead of being different at the time. Because I mean, yeah, for the most part, most shonen are your characters weak and they have to train up to be strong. But Simone was the weakest. Like
Mhm.
he was the bottom level guy, and he has so many catalysts to develop him. Um, and the support, the power of friendship in that one also is not bullshit because that's the actual driving factor for improvement.
Yep.
And the loss of a friend or pretty much friend, mentor,
Pretty
Brother
much
is
and
brother.
all, yeah.
brother, yeah,
Yeah.
everything is the full. It could have been the end of him, or it could have been the rebirth of him, and thankfully what he did and used it for rebirth instead of just giving up. Because I mean, Simon did not care. Like he did not want to be in that position to be in, like at all, and he didn't think he was worthy of it. He didn't feel like he had earned it or deserved it or anything like that. But then he used that loss to sort of flip the switch and be like, I may not have earned it now, but the potential in me will outdo my expectations of myself and I will grow to that level.
Yep.
So it's done so well and like that. And I wish a lot of the more niche anime, I think, have better protagonists than mainstream anime.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah,
Well, that's
definitely.
100%. There's no question.
Because then they don't have the expectations of following the formula. They're able to tweak the formula and rewrite the formula two different ways, and it works so well. That's not saying that there's not some mainstream protagonists that are not fucking great or anything like that, because there are still a few that take the formula and better it by the, I guess the deriving of the expectations to like we're like, oh, it's supposed to be A, B, C, D, but they take the protagonist and make it go A, B, E, F, B, C, D, all like there's everywhere. It's mixed up everywhere to where it actually makes the formula at the end and it makes sense that way. Um, but no, like I love, like I said, I love that we all do have different. Our protagonists are different and so varied because like it just makes it seem like there are so many protagonists out there to go. There's so many series to go out there and watch and enjoy. First off, the man, like I said, the niche ones are so undervalued and so underrated. And yeah, with the growing of mainstream media or mainstream anime and people who were who are veterans of anime are telling people who are sort of new to it to go watch these niche ones, they may grow and not be niche anymore, but you can probably count on your hands how many people have actually watched uh the series and actually understand what the series are in my expectation. Like, yeah, you may have watched it, but do you understand what is going on through the storytelling?
Yeah.
And that's always the thing with niche anime is the layers of storytelling. You have to actually watch it. Because I mean, we're all guilty of it. We've all thrown an anime in the background and doing something else and just listen, but you can do that with mainstream anime because the formula. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. But with some of these niche ones, like that's I always recommend. I do recommend Scribe to so many people because of how niche it is and how it's a short series. But the storytelling is so well done and layered, just like sorry, just like Gurren Lagann, I got me like Kill. Shoot, what's the other one? Did I write it down? I don't think I wrote it down.
Mhm.
No, I
What
didn't
you
write it down.
what are you thinking
Uh,
of?
it's in the same vein as Gurren Lagann, Agame La Kill. There is the other because there was three of them that were sort of the same in that aspect. Um, Shoot, I went over this at work. I wrote it down on a bunch of notes and everything, and I was like, "Oh, I'll remember this because I wrote it down." No, I literally do have to start taking pictures of it or actually put it in my phone because I don't bring my notes home.
Oh, that's
Um,
what I do. Yeah, everything for the podcast I do on my phone now because I'm not gonna remember my notes.
well, I mean, I do, but I just wrote down to four, but I sort of started writing some of the stuff down, and I was like, I'll remember it. It's
Yeah.
whatever. Then no, nope. Um, Maybe it'll come back to me later when we're talking or something like that. And I'll
Yeah,
go
I
ahead.
can get to it.
But yeah, if you want to go ahead and tell us your second in line, not second overall.
Well, my second in line was initially, as Kareem talked about, and you guys kind of went all the way through on a part of my reason as well. Because it was a very like, especially then, it was a very different take on protagonists, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're used to them being weak, but we're not used to them mentally feeling weak, right?
Yeah.
I think the only time that we've had that was with Deku for my hero, but the difference with Deku is that he has only recently stopped being hated. Deku and majority of the community has been hated for years about being or being seen as a crybaby or mentally weak. Do I agree with it? Not as much, but I do know for a fact that only in recent time that has he turned out to stop feeling like he's just some crybaby little kid with really OP powers, right? With Gurren Lagann, it never felt that way. It always felt genuine, and that weakness felt genuine. That weakness always felt like they were doing it the right way. And again, not to say that My Hero didn't necessarily do it the right way, but the way that they did it, the mass majority understood that that was the consensus. Um, and so you guys, like, so you guys already went into literally everything I was thinking of in my head when I came up. So I'll go to my third one. My third one is from a show called So I'm a Spider, So What? It is an isekai show. And yes, it's one of those long named weird shows, but it the protagonist of that show, it's so anime that I would not typically recommend it to a new watcher of anime because it is very anime, but in the best way possible. Even in the episode descriptions, they reference the main character, which is a literal spider. It's not like, hey, this or that. It's like literally a spider, but a dungeon crawler anime. Um, and so they reference the main character as she's the protagonist. They don't reference her name in the episode details. They just say the protagonist. Um, but I like it because it is the definition of a solo run protagonist. For most of the show, I'm not going to mention too much of it because I do think it's a good show. I think avid anime watchers and a bit more veterans in it should watch it and probably will like it. So I will leave as many spoilers out of it as I can. But for the most of the show, she is by herself. She is literally doing a whole dungeon crawler adventure by herself. And I liked it because it was a very interesting take on completely isolating the main character from anyone else. And anything that she does, any power-ups that she gets on her own. And for the majority of the show, no one else even knows that she has set power-ups. And so it was cool seeing this idea of, I guess you could say, a true assassin's build, right? A build of, hey, I am by myself. I don't have a team with me. This is just what I got to do and popping off, right? But also the weird aspect of she was a nerd and a very heavy manga reader in her original world. So she was also applying all of this video game knowledge and anime knowledge, making it comedic and just fun. And just the whole premise of it was just a very fun watch. And as a protagonist, it was very different from what I'm used to, right? From the formulas that we typically see. She was never truly weak mentally either. She was always simply there, similar to Simone, but never embraced it until she had no choice but to. She was literally forced into a position of, I'm gonna die. And it's not a joke anymore that I'm gonna die. So I need to go ahead and lock it in. And I just greatly appreciate the way that they did that show. And I'll do a couple little small things with spoilers, but she was a kid who was bullied majority of the time in the school. She was the quiet kid, she was bullied. She wasn't important. And within the show, she is essentially through life-threatening moments having to realize and learn her importance through survival. She's now not even a human anymore. She's literally been turned into a species of spider from this new world. She's having to fight off psychic attacks from a exceptionally powerful, basically you could say demon lord for the sense of power scaling that you guys don't understand in this one yet. Constantly throughout the entirety of the show. So she's also having to learn more of a sense of self while also fully embracing who she was beforehand. So it's just a great take, in my personal opinion, of a protagonist that is literally alone. Because typically you don't ever see the protagonist be alone for the entirety of the series. Like there's
Mm.
always some random point where they find a team and now it's a whole squad and for other character development. Because it's I feel like in some cases as a writer, it's easier. It's easier to try and make sure that there's people surrounding your said protagonist so that you don't have to focus on specifically their character growth only, but you can have other areas you can take a break. But with this, it's quite literally borderline just her the whole show. So it was a very fun and cool take. So that's why I have her because it's so uniquely different from what anything I've watched.
Damn, am I about to get into isekai now?
No. I mean, we do talk about because this is the season of isekai. There's so much isekais. There are some that are actually good, but
Really good. But the mass majority, they got to put it down. Like seriously, put the pen down. Do something else.
like I was talking to somebody in the Discord, in the DC Discord, because they had talked about uh campfire cooking in another world with my absurd skill, which I watched that one because I like cooking animes to begin with. It is a weird isekai that's also a cooking anime. But I was like that the title that's not the actual title. That's just a poorly translated title because it's like
100%.
shoot, what was it again? It's I'm cook in another world. I am cooking. Shoot, now it's gonna drive me crazy. I
Yeah.
literally had this conversation like
It's literally like, is it wrong to pick up girls in a dungeon? Is
it's not the
the
right
way,
actual
yeah.
translation.
It's
Yeah,
also the way that they have it is way shorter and not as heinous. Most people kind of just translate it to familia myth more than anything else.
Mhm.
where
But
is
I genuinely do like I gatekeep a lot, Creed. I still want to gatekeep the show personally, but if you do watch it, I definitely if you do have the inkling at one point, I definitely do recommend watching. And you guys as well, listening in. If even if Isekai is not really your vibe, it is a show that is isekai that still does make fun of itself, kind of similar to One Punch Man, but not fully all the way. Um, it's just a fun watch. It's decent. It's also animation wise, it's very unique on its own as well. It's not as expected. It's a mix of regular animation and CGI, but not in a bad way, in a surprisingly good way, a good way that you can get used to and doesn't actually bother you. Because I know when AOT did it, it bothered me a lot.
I'm mad as fuck that I can't find this now.
I am upset though because it doesn't have a second season. It's been 2.5 years.
Damn.
It could.
Yeah, it could. And I'm debating. It has a very good twist. I will say that the twist is very unexpected because they don't really talk too much about what's actually going on timeline wise. So it surprised me. Surprised me way more than I thought it was going to, for sure.
Hmm.
Tell me what your actual name is. Dang it. Ah.
We are
Uh.
on. So we're on three now. Yeah, on three.
Yes.
Yeah.
So for my third one, I can do this. Cause I know my two. For my third one is gonna be Ichigo, from Bleach. To me, he is. I'm probably gonna say he is my number one protagonist. He breaks all the standards by being the child of prophecy who doesn't care about being the child of prophecy. Um, he was given his task that he didn't want, but he did it to save somebody, just like Yusuke. He was just given the task and just did it because he has to. Um, he always tries to save the antagonist because he doesn't want to kill, but he knows he has to kill sometimes. So he always has an internal conflict. He's lost his power before, um,
Such a
and
depressive state, man.
yeah, and when he did lose his powers, he did go down, but he still try to be normal, essentially try to go back to what his life was. Um, and try to make the bad situation good. He tried to make a good situation out of a bad situation, and eventually, when he does get his powers back, spoilers for Creed, but just skip the bout arc. I'm telling you, you'll catch
Yeah,
up. It'll be
yeah,
fine.
you'll be
Uh,
fine. You'll be
yeah.
fine.
But no, he consistently checks on his friends, communicates with people, tries to figure out what's going on. He consistently trains because he knows he has to. Because so in Bleach, it could take you hundreds of years to learn how to do Bankai. Ichigo learned it in 3 days. Yes, because he's a child of prophecy, but he also had the greatest mentor, which is Urahara, who put him in such a horrible state of stress and consistent pressure that he made him learn how to like actually control his spiritual pressure and communication with his Zanpakuto at the time, which we find out things about it, but whatever. But no,
That's any spoilers.
yeah,
We'll keep
yeah,
we'll keep
that's what
it
I'm saying. That's
for
what I'm
both the
saying.
audience and for Creed because he's still finishing it.
Oh, I
But
already know what it is.
We
But
know it is, but we're gonna pretend like you don't, like you didn't watch Thousand Year Blood
your
War
Blood
arc
War
before
before,
everything
yeah.
else.
I'm gonna watch the final arc and start to. I'm gonna read the last 3 pages of this book and I'm gonna start over from the beginning, see what
I
happens.
have done that before.
That is,
Listen,
I'm gonna
I get
punch
it if
you.
you
I'm
skip
gonna
I
punch
get it
you.
if you skip 50 pages in, right? 50 pages in, that's understandable. But the last page is crazy. He's like, let me see if it gets good. Oh, it does. Wow, it got really good. But then it ruins the goodness.
Oh, there's a whole community of people that do that on a regular basis.
No,
Yeah,
So
that's wild.
there's so many people that do. It's
I
so
did it for the first time with an anime the other day because it was just as a fair warning, guys, if you guys are new to anime and you guys are finding our podcast just at random and like, oh, I wonder what anime would be like. There are definitely some anime that you should stay far, far away from. There are
yes.
good anime and there are bad. One of the anime that I watched that I somehow managed to finish just because it was bugging me that I'm like, I don't want this to sit in my watch list anymore. So I'm just gonna finish it. But it had pedophilia, it had
Ooh,
all kinds of foolishness in the show. So please be
what?
when you're watching it, if it's feeling weird for you, and it's not in a sense of weird culturally, it's a sense of weird of morally, you don't gotta watch it, y'all. Not all anime is like that, and do not force yourself to watch something if you're like trying to like break away from cultural norms. Like this is anime. It's supposed to be good, right? But don't do that to yourself. If you don't like
it's
it, you don't have
supposed
to like
it's supposed to make you cringe.
it.
Sure.
Oh man, I'm divided now. Crap, I'm divided with my last one.
But I was going to say but no, Ichigo took a lot of standards and flipped them and made them new, well, refreshed them pretty much and made it show like, hey, your character doesn't have to be just because your character is the prophecy child, he doesn't have to act like the prophecy child. He doesn't have everything handed to him. Yeah, Ichigo did have things handed to him, but he worked hard for a lot of his stuff. He took L's all the time. Um, and then when he finally do it, when he finally did get that next level power up, there was always another challenge over that where he had to get to that point again. It wasn't like he was just able to wipe out whole squads or whole teams and stuff like that. Like I said, he didn't always want to kill either. He was always trying to take a broken character and understand them. So he did like a lot of what Naruto did, where the talk no jutsu, but he's like, yo, run the fade because this talk no jutsu is at a time. Um, but no, he went through so much, and even now to this point, 1,000 Year Blood War, there's still so much more we're learning from about him, and he's still learning so much about himself and what's really going on in his life, or sort of how he came to be, which is I've always the one of the antagonist tropes that I hate is the guy that planned out hundreds of years of stuff and no variable ever happened along the way, and that's so stupid. That's so stupid to me because
Aizen.
the fact that Aizen was the worst. Aizen doesn't even make sense because he's trying to take claim of making Ichigo's dad and mom meet, but he had no control of that.
Yeah, no. He did. Aizen definitely, I will say this. Aizen definitely gasses his own intelligence up
Mhm.
way more than what he can actually take credit for.
Yeah, because there's no way he could have made that happen because
Negro, it could have been
uh,
any, you could have deployed him, you could have had her, you could have done anything, and it still
yeah,
could have been possible that she just would have died for real.
yeah. Like I don't even want to get into it. That's for a different day. Like
Yeah.
that people hype up Aizen so much as like the one of the greatest. Like this
Aizen's
dude
the same
is.
hype of like
Go ahead.
Itachi.
Oh, hold on,
No, sorry,
hold
not Itachi. I
on.
meant the Akatsuki part. Excuse me. That the same hype of like
How
I'll
great the
say
Akatsuki are when they're actually born as great as
yeah,
people actually. Yeah.
exactly. Because like and in some areas Itachi's I know he's still like definitely a good character for the most part. And has depth and has done almost everything he did do was intentional and it wasn't over years of time. It was just well planned and not everything did go according to plan, obviously. But
Hmm.
I do know a lot of people overly praise his character because the character does deserve praise, yes. But a lot of people glaze the life out of the Akatsuki and
I
Itachi
do.
at times.
I don't.
It's not like there's a good way to do it, and then there's a overbearing way to do it.
Well, what people don't understand about the Akatsuki is that they all are representations of sort of sins, but also fractures of people's
Yeah,
different people's upbringings because they're all yes, they're all evil, but a lot of them are were evil because of the situation, their environment, or
exactly.
because they had to do something. Yeah, there are Hidan, Kakuza, and
They don't know.
no, Data didn't even want to be a Akatsuki. Remember, he got beat by Itachi, and Itachi forced him to
Oh
be a
yeah, that's
Akatsuki
right.
because Itachi was trying to save Data out, but also keep an eye on him because he thought that Data eventually would get to the level of surpassing him because of his ability. But Hidan, Kakuzu, and Kisame. But Kisame is also weird because we don't know enough about him really. Um, but Kakuzu and Hidan for sure are pure evil. Um, but Kakuzu also was in the situation of where his village disowned him because he lost to the greatest shinobi of all time after fighting him for like 10 days. So I was like, or not really 10 days. Madara fought Hashirama for 10 days, but Kakuzu fought Hashirama. They had a long battle. He lost, and then his village like you brought dishonor to our
Dishonored.
village because you lost to the greatest shinobi of all time. Like, yo, run a fade. How about y'all fight me? How about that? Let's see. If you
Or how
guys
about
beat
y'all
me,
fight him? Y'all go
yeah.
fight that Negro.
He's like
Y'all fight
you.
him and tell me what's
He's
up.
like you sent me as a singular person to face the guy that can literally make trees of life and death, and literally can slap demons down to the ground. So what was I supposed to do? But no, but then we find out he's a fucking cannibal, murderer, and everything like that. So he was already evil to begin with, and that's why they sent him out to because they thought he was evil and strong enough to face Hashirama, which is crazy to me. But Hedon is weak as crap, but he worships a god. With
Heinous God.
well, the thing is, people still believe that um Josh or Josh, what is it?
I think it's Joshon.
Yes, is a Uchiha, which is crazy to me that people think that. I think it more would be a Senju over an Uchiha, but whatever.
But also
Um,
Joshon is it's an Indian name. If I can remember.
yeah, it is. But yeah, but I digress. Aizen super glazed for no like he's good. To me, he's on the same level as Frieza. They keep bringing him back, but he doesn't do anything,
You
and I hate
know?
it. You know I'm right.
Oh yeah, yeah.
um, but yeah, that was my third. I do think Ichigo to me might be the he might be my number one or number two for sure because just how he was able to just destroy not destroy but refresh the standards and bring so many tropes in one but make them different by changing how they're actually supposed to be and then it's multiple formulas becoming one big formula. All right, so your turn, sir.
Okay, so my third pick for my list is Kaneki Ken from Tokyo Ghoul. Um,
Hmm.
I think that, starting out, it's one of those stories where it actually does a good job of showing you what it's like to drastically go from one world to another. Because the whole concept of Tokyo Ghoul is that you have your humans and the ghouls, and obviously the ghouls are like the bane of society. They're like the monsters that you avoid. And for Kaneki to basically fall head over heels for this woman, be set into a trap because she turns out to be a ghoul, and then in turn, um, basically is saved by her unintentionally because her blood mixes with his during the accident. He now has to live a separate life as a hybrid between a human and ghoul, and that changes his perspective on everything. Because at first he feared them, and he had his moments where he just was in denial. He didn't know how to properly adjust to the changes, and then when he got kidnapped and tortured by Jason, that was pretty much his like snapping point of when he fully accepted his ghoul nature and finally decided to go with it instead of fighting it. And from there, it was just a journey of him kind of finding that balance because he went full ghoul and he had this incident where he turned into a cockajoo and start because he started cannibalizing other ghouls. But then at that point, there was a shift where he started to kind of reel back a little bit and get more control of who he is and what he's doing and basically what his end goal was. And so for me, I think as a protagonist in a story where you're trying to navigate yourself through a world with two vastly different factions or just vastly different views of the world, I think it's very interesting and I think they did a good job with his character to kind of show from his perspective of how someone would navigate that world and how they would navigate, going from one life to another in the blink of an eye.
I do like him as a protagonist, especially with it being a dark anime. There's always a different standard and different set, and he went through so much um, torment. I was going to say a different word, but torment's probably the best word as a character. So his way of growth was more different than the like expectations and standards that we're used to,
Mm.
and the overall morality debate and issue that the manga and anime is trying to set up to begin with is what are you willing to do overall? Because what is the line he says? Like, shoot, it's what is this quote? Um,
Which part of the story?
Hold on, I'm gonna do this. Boom, boom, boom. It's where he's like, um, shoot, is the where she's holding him and she asks him what he's willing to do. Ah, you guys keep talking. I'm gonna find it. I'm telling you. I have it here, but it's no longer like this old brain
Well,
ain't working no more.
We
because
fully
I
get it.
think I kind of think I know what you're talking about, but yeah, it's taking a minute for me to fully ideal remember what it
Like
was he
like
said.
the actual way how he said it. And that's what I'm trying to say, like the exact quote. Uh but nope, that's not it. That's not it.
I had three set that I knew I was gonna have to like sit here and debate in my head about for my fourth one. And I still am debating in my head because one of them I would be outing myself.
Do it.
Another one would be another like out that everybody would be looking at me like, bro, are you serious?
I
And
mean,
then
oh,
mhm.
go ahead.
No, you can finish that statement. You're good.
Well, I was gonna say, to be honest, one of the characters I picked was a villain, and I had to change that real quick because for some reason, I didn't hear the part of it being protagonists mainly. So,
I
I
mean,
mean, some villains can be protagonists. Like
yeah,
Light is a protagonist, but he's the villain.
yeah,
well,
exactly.
well, for this character, he's specifically a villain.
Oh,
He's a damn
One
good
of
villain.
like two of them are very like big out of what I used to watch in anime, and one of them I doubt anyone really. I really doubt anybody here would really know what it is. Um, oh, I forgot about the show. Dang. Okay. Oh man, it's between four. Gosh, bro. But also,
Hmm.
I had two rules when it came to the protagonist. I purposely said I have cannot, with then one exception, which is part of the four-way tie thing. I could not do typical shonen. It could be shonen, but it could not be typical, or it could not be a character that was the obvious typical for the shonen. Um, I tried to stay far away from the really heart-wrenching anime, light novel anime like Edge Runners, things like that, because was trying to make it harder for myself, and listing shows like that, I feel like it's definitely like a cheat code when it comes to the protagonists, because those shows are just the way that they're set up. They were going to be good from the jump. Like as long as they did this one set right, they were going to be good. Period. And I think Edge Runners was definitely one of those shows. So I made it harder for myself, and because I made it harder for myself, I ended up getting to that point of that four-way tie, and I've been trying to get it figured out, and I still can't, because it's like they all are very valid to me for all very specific reasons.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I can say that all the choices I made for mine are basically all characters I've gotten lessons from.
Mhm.
So they all have some sort of significance for me from things I've learned. So that's pretty much what my list is comprised of. I mean, the last one I feel like will probably be a dead giveaway because I do mention the specific series and stuff a lot.
We
Actually, no.
That's crazy how you got it off rip though. Like off rip, you got it. I said the ending portion of the very first, mind you, very first OP. It's like,
I
I know exactly what you're talking about.
those things are stuck in the back of my head, man. I can't get them out.
Don't worry, I have every single out OP and outro for Bleach in my head memorized. You
Same.
play it, I'll probably know exactly what it is.
I think I could do the same with Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Z. I know like
We
most
go
of the
Dragon Ball.
intros.
We go
Dun,
Dragon
dun,
Ball.
dun, 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 dun,
That's actually from
dun,
Dragon
dun,
Ball
dun,
though, not
dun,
Dragon Ball Z,
dun.
is it?
Yeah,
Because
that's Dragon
they
Ball.
okay, yeah, yeah. That's the reason I haven't been able to get fully caught up because I started off with Dragon Ball with Goku's baby penis every time, and then Bulma flashing her bare vagina constantly.
See,
Creed's
you,
laughing because he
you
knows what
do
I'm talking about. He knows how bad that was in the early start of Dragon Ball.
I mean, it wasn't bad until you literally just said the word baby penis, and that's all. Now that
That's what it
just
was. That's literally Goku looked like a toddler. Homie was standing at a crisp 2'5",
that
walking
was the
around.
gimmick of anime back then for some weird reason.
Standing at good 2'5", being 14 years old, but still whipping out his schlong everywhere he would go just to take a piss. It'd be at random. It'd be a serious fight. Like, hang on, 1 second. What do you mean 1 second? Oh, turns around. What are you doing? Why are you turning around your head to the opponent? Starts peeing.
Just
Just starts got it.
ah.
And then all the times that whenever they had to go swimming, he would just strip all his clothes off. I'm like, for what reason though?
But he's a wildling. He doesn't know better.
All right,
He
well, while you
doesn't.
guys were talking about baby penises, I found the
You stupid.
quote.
Oh man.
uh, it's when he's being tortured by Jason and what's
Oh, I
her
know
grace,
what you're talking about
and then
now.
she asks
Okay.
him, well, she says, you saw what happened with your mother, and then he has a breakdown where he's like, Mom, why did you have to leave me here? Um, well, I wish that you were still here with me. Why did you have to leave? I hate being alone. And then she asked him, um,
Oh, Reese.
yeah, she's like, she asked him, get to the point already. Even if it meant forsaking your aunt, yes, if she'd be here now, even if it meant hurting her, if I had to be done, even if it meant killing her, whatever it takes.
Mm-hmm.
And then that just shows that they broke him to the point where he was willing to exchange one life for another without hesitation.
Yeah, he was
And
willing to
that's,
just toss everything to the side in that one moment.
yep. And that's what I like is that at this point for real, we know that he is truly broken as a person now. And now it goes from a story of somebody pretty much getting screwed in life and a bad situation to are they going to redeem themselves or are they going to veer more into the darkness?
Mm.
And that's what I like about Tokyo Ghoul in general until the second season fucked everything up. But they remastered it this year because it's the 10th year anniversary now.
Yeah, I think so.
Hmm.
Damn.
Or next year, something like this year or next year, one of the two.
Either
Um,
or.
but that was your third. So, and Josh already said his third. So I guess I'm gonna do my last one. My last one is the duo of the Elric brothers, Because without one, you won't have the other one. Everybody says that Ed is the protagonist, but that's not. I mean, it is true, but it's not true at the same time because without literally without Alphonse, there is no Ed. If
Yeah,
Alphonse would
that's a
be,
package deal.
Yeah.
if yeah, like what happened to? It literally starts with both of them being beyond the smartest kids ever in the world, apparently, which is the point that you learn understand the science to such a dire level that like you and like three other people can understand it to this level, and you're two 10-year-olds essentially.
Right.
Um, and then you guys understand the fact that you're doing something forbidden because to equivalently exchange for a life, you have to give up something literally to the level of that life. And they understood that and they still went ahead with it. And it's the fact that to bring their mother back, Alphonse's life was taken from him, but to exchange it at the exact same rate that Ed Gates sacrificed his arm and leg, literally
Hmm.
arm and leg, to bring his brother's soul back and put it into something. Because he didn't get his brother's body back, he got his brother's soul back.
Yep.
And he understood that the body was important, but his brother's soul is who his brother was. And without his brother always being there, then Ed would have never been who he grew up to be, who he was, or would have done what he had to do because his whole, from that point on, both their goal was to get the Philosopher's Stone to go back to normal life. And yeah, we see Ed doing more, but the moments of Alphonse doing what he's doing or protecting people or actual fighting like he's supposed like he was supposed to because technically he's still a 10-year-old child in a giant suit of armor. Like he doesn't
Hmm.
it's different. So he has to go through the existential crisis of what is existence. And then Ed's crisis is what lengths am I willing to go to bring my brother back? So both their issues are lied in one another. So you wouldn't have one without the other. So you couldn't have Full Metal Alchemist with just Ed. You couldn't have Full Metal Alchemist with just Al. They are literally a true combination of dual protagonists, which is so rare. But I mean, I've said it before, say it again over and over again. To me, Full Metal Alchemist, the series in general, is a 10 out of 10. Yes, there are some small plot holes here and there or small things here and there, but it doesn't take away from the perfection of anime where it took the elements of everything that makes a good story, the character development, the timing of situations, mixing drama and comedy and quietness and action and making layered villains, making layered co your co-stars who aren't perfect either. Everybody is literally going through something in that series because the world isn't perfect. It is a world in which a science pretty much controls the world because once you understand what alchemy is, you're pretty much taking a vow of understanding that I'm exchanging one thing for another. So one thing's value is technically more than this other thing's value, and I will have to sacrifice for those consequences sooner or later. And every single person, pretty much in one way or the other, does go through that dire situation or close to that situation of going through the door at some points. Um, and then obviously we do have our two horrible moments in anime of Nina Tucker and then Mayhew's death,
Hmm.
which both moments are they hit emotions at a different level because Mayhew's we got more time with him. We had short moments, but we got more time of understanding who and what he was. And Nina was just pure innocence taken away. So it was two different ends of, I guess, dramatic, um, dramatic plot driven, like a dramatic catalyst, more best way to say it. And they both situations, well, the Nia situation made Ed and Al grow and understand that the military was not what they expected to be. Who they thought were the right people aren't the right people. In the Mace Hughes situation, gave Riza and Mustang their understanding of yes, we lose people in battle, but some people's life are more important than others, and that's a hard thing to understand in the military. And I think that's what really drives Roy is that he lost his best friend, but somebody who was his complete opposite because Maisie was always fun and go happy and loving life and had a family and things to go towards, while Roy was still single. He was alone. He wasn't expressive. He wasn't really the emotional type. He was very military strict kind of person. And then him losing his pretty much his yin to his yang opened up his eyes to a different life. He didn't want to be the same person he was at that point. And then obviously we find out Riza's story and find out the cruelness she had to go through, which was still to this day it's kind of crazy to me that she did that. She was okay with that, sort of, I guess. I mean, to each their own. Yeah, she was forced into it, but then she was sort of okay with it at the same time. So it was
Mhm.
kind of weird to me. Um, but also the villains are created villains. They weren't meant to exist. They're homunculus, they weren't meant to exist, but they were brought to the world and they hate the world because they are not of the earth. They're not the chosen ones. They were made, and each one is a sin. But the only one that really represents their sin, I guess, well, I guess envy is one,
Yeah, I'm about to say envy for sure. Envy.
but
Mhm.
greed is also the only other one that really represents who their sin is. Like gluttony, yeah, he eats a lot of everything, but he's a joke, really.
I kind of, well, I mean, if we're really getting to the,
Crux of
he
it.
is, yeah, to the at least to the core of what that entails. In the simplest of terms, gluttony is just that. It's
Yeah,
consummation, not
yeah,
some, and that's just what he does. Gluttony eats everything. He don't care what you is, what you are, or what it is. And that in itself, that constant desire for feeding can be pretty darn. I know he's a joke character. They could have definitely
yeah,
capitalized way more on it, but just the idea of constantly being hungry, it's a little terrifying some if you really think about it.
for sure. But it's just like they could have made him, I guess, more menacingly like the other ones, but they
Yeah.
made him more of the child of the group, which makes sense because I mean, I guess they sort of trained him and kept him under control. And I guess that's sort of like he was more of a domesticated dog instead of a person, well, an equal to them at that point. But he could have, I think it's because he could have overtaken them more than they could have like actually. I think the fear of him being able to eat them was what the driving factor for that was. Maybe
Yeah.
Oh,
there's
100%. He did not
there's
care.
Yeah.
no there's so much, like I said, there's so much layers to it. Like the villains all have they all, of course, have a specific purpose because they're antagonists, but they're each a specific antagonist to a specific person, and it's usually the each one is a representation of not what the person is lacking, but more of what the person could be. I guess is the best way to say that. Because Roy and Envy really do they counter each other, but they're almost one and the same, I guess,
Mhm.
in certain ways. Um, but but overall, going through it, and then the only part of Full Metal that I always have an issue with is the final battle from Full Metal Alchemist, the original series, is the random German Nazi turn point out of nowhere. That always got me like I was like not what I expected at all once they walked through that door. Um, like I knew they were in Germany back in the day, but that was just a swerve out of nowhere. Um, but for Brotherhood, the final battle, they they do the thing where the villain is such a high level, and then you're trying to get your protagonist to that level, but they couldn't really completely write a good way, so they sort of shoehorned a way to make them on even level, and I think that's the weakest point of the series. But overall, like I said, to me, it's still a 10 out of 10 anime no matter what. Um,
Yeah, they're just nitpicks, is what he was
yeah,
trying to
it's
say.
literally nitpicks because this. me just being like, this should have been like this. I'm like, no, it's still overall perfect. There's and one of my honorable mentions I was going to say is a character from a show that I believe is also on the same level as Fullmetal Alchemist. But I'm not going to say it because somebody said we shouldn't talk about honorable mentions. So so
You already mentioned it, so you might as well go ahead.
nope. I had three honorable mentions, but I'm not going to say any of them now. So we're good.
This is like the fourth time you've mentioned honorable mentions, so you
Hey,
might as well.
no, we're good. You can go ahead and say your last. Go ahead and
He's
say your
stirring
last
things.
one.
Yeah. I'll
Yeah.
go last. I think mine is fairly different.
All right. So for my last member of my Mount Rushmore, I have was probably predictable, Guts from Berserk.
Oh yeah,
I am
completely
repping
predictable.
it a little bit today,
Is he
so
really the protagonist of the series, though?
yes, he
Yes.
is. Yeah. Um,
I think Griffith is technically the protagonist of the series,
boy.
And Gutsa is actually the
Nuts from Burke.
antagonist.
Um, so for me, Guts is definitely one of my top tier protagonists. Mainly because he is, I mean, just the series of
Excuse me.
Berserk itself is a nice representation of what corrupted people are willing to do to get what they want. Because a lot of it is these people are giving up their humanity for power, wealth, um, eternal life, stuff like that, and in turn are sacrificing things that are important to them. There's a character who was willing to sacrifice his daughter and like didn't have any second thoughts about it. There are people that have sacrificed, well, there's one that sacrificed like an entire nation just about just so he could have power. But like Guts himself is a he was a child of misfortune. He was born from a dead woman hanging from a tree and somehow was able to stay alive. And from then he grew up with not bandits, mercenaries that basically just made their living off of fighting in random wars, getting pocket change when they could to survive, living from encampment to encampment. The man that he thought was his father or saw as his father figure betrayed him and basically made him susceptible to something that scarred him for life, which, affected his relationship with people. And in the end, he in turn killed the man that was his father, burn in hell Gambino. But and from there it was just watching a story of someone that didn't know how to trust people survive in a world where you don't know if you'll see tomorrow. Um, from that early point before things took a turn, he spent a lot of time in solitude, was hopping around from fight to fight, trying to just make a living to survive, getting stronger so that way he didn't have to deal with what he dealt with before. And once he, like, a few years later, he met Griffith, who basically turned things around for him. That was the point where he began to open up more and trust people. Um, he was still hesitant, but he began to grow and develop as a character a bit and open up a little bit more and accept that, sometimes you do need people in your life. But then, the eclipse happens, and that is the moment where he basically just went back to where he was before, but in a darker place. He lost everyone he cared about. The woman that he loved got, defiled and basically mentally ruined. She's not the same person that she was anymore, and he had to fight for his life and watch everyone he cared about die. So from that, it created a darker aspect of himself. He didn't care whether people lived or died. He just needed to do what he needed to do, get done what he needed to get done. And, at the end of the day, he only cared about himself and just wanted to survive. And that's pretty much what he stuck with for a while. It took some time, but eventually he did find people that opened him back up. And I think that was an important aspect to see him redevelop that trust with people again, and then also just meet these new characters that introduced new aspects and ideas to him that he didn't think about before. And so he still has his moments where he's hesitant, but he's more open than he was before, and he's more accepting of people because of where he is now versus where he was before. He's definitely a lot more lenient and more forgiving. Um, he's willing to be patient with people, even if they don't deserve it, because he knows that the people that he cares about values that. And so I thought that was really important. But to me, Guts is a character that, despite living a life of tragedy, he still has some semblance of humanity. He's literally fighting a beast of darkness on a regular basis. He does succumb to it, but in the end, with the help of his friends, he does overcome it. And he has his moments where he is able to triumph without it, but he does succumb to it. But in the end, he wants to be able to control it, to be able to use it how he wishes rather than being controlled by it. Um, but yeah, I mean, honestly, I think Guts is definitely one of my top picks for this because he is just, to me, he is a character that perseveres. He does not give up. He will fight to see the end that he wants to see. And one of the things that I take away from this series a lot, and I repeat to myself like regularly, is struggle, endure, contend, because that's something that I think a lot of people could use. You gotta struggle to get to the point where you're able to be contend, or to where you're able to endure. And then from that enduring, you want to be able to contend to be comfortable. And I think that's a journey that a lot of people can see a lot of value in. But yeah, that's my final character for my Mount Rushmore.
This man Creed went through his whole life cycle, man. All mine are just like, oh yeah, I would probably won't ever forget that kind of antagonist if from Mount Rushmore, just honorable people. I'll be honest, my last was tied between two folks. If you guys want me to, I can talk about both of them very briefly because
Mm.
it's not like some long life story thing. It's more so like my takes on them. When I was putting together Mount Rushmore, I was thinking both of, obviously I had my limiters that I mentioned prior, but also I had that was thinking of characters that no matter what, no matter how old I get, I will remember how these characters acted or impacted my life when it came to watching anime. So I have two, but I'll say the two, and you guys let me know whether you just want me to do the one. This one is probably be a bit of a surprise, and I'll probably get chewed out for this, but one of them is Lucy Heartfilia from Fairy Tail.
I
I
don't
know
know
it's
for
a,
you.
yeah, I know it's an interesting take, but in Fairy Tale, technically Lucy is the protagonist because the story starts off with her, and majority of the story is from her perspective. Almost like even when we get the episode stuff, majority of it is from her perspective. My secondary one was the main character or the main female protagonist from Chivalry of a Failed Knight. It is a story about it's now, mind you, I did watch this when I was like 16. I was like 14. Yeah, I was like 14 or so when I started watching this show. It isn't ecchi, it is rated TVMA. So there's, I believe, mind you, I haven't seen this in years. So there may be nudity in it, but we're adults here. We kind of, if we need to ignore it, we do. We just kind of keep it pushing. But essentially the story is he doesn't have high magic powers. He's in a world surrounded by where your status is how much magic you have. How well you do, what you can do, and how wealthy you're going to be is determined by how powerful your magic is. And he has no magic power whatsoever. Even if he does, it's like exceptionally small to the point where it doesn't even matter. And it's kind of this romance story of both him overcoming the stigma of people with no magic can still be powerful, but also fighting himself because he's falling in love with the most powerful female character in the world who can use the most powerful magic. So it's kind of like this back and forth between two internal battles of fighting society, but also fighting his own personal desires. And it's honestly a very cutesy little, high school love story type of thing, as well as that secondary portion. So I can, whichever one you guys are more interested in me talking about, I can talk about.
I mean, it's your list.
I know Lucy. I know. I fully know why Lucy. I also fully know why for. I fully know my choices for these. Uh, I'll go for Chivalry of a Failed Knight because anyone who doesn't like Fairy Tail will probably continue not to like Fairy Tail. But I'm sure without too many people have heard of this show. Um, I chose this one because in the most typical sense possible, this guy is a main character. He has no magic. He literally his power is I have martial arts and a big sword. Fight me. And it ends up working out because there's a plot line that they go into where like, hey, you can still get into this school and get this wealth and power without needing magic. And he's taking out people left and right who have magic, and he's doing excellent, right? And then he ends up getting roomed with, as I said, the most powerful, or to be considered to be the most powerful female character in the show when it comes to magic capabilities and ability in general. Um, and part of the reason why this just meant so much to me was both because as a teenager, seeing a romance novel that wasn't, typical American one, or wasn't the typical cool guy always getting what he wanted, but it was a very human level of awkwardness and honesty, right? They had a point where they were unsure about one another's feelings and whether that it was true or whether it was real. It's kind of like that weird, high school stuff where like I like you and I don't know if you like me. And it's just that weird back and forth. It was a very, wholesome, just wholesome but honest frustration that was there, which I greatly appreciated, and you don't really get to see too often in romance anime that are also so happen to have action and fighting in it. But I also liked the character because he is constantly being oppressed time and time again. There's one point where he literally gets put in a room by himself for I think months with no food and mainly water only because they want him to lose and prove to the world that he's not him, that he is not a good person, that he should not be with the rest of us, that he should be put in slavery, that he should be lesser than us. And so they, even with everything stacked against him, including his entire body being deteriorated for months at a time, he still perseveres and decides, this is not just about me anymore. This is to prove that to the world as a whole, doesn't matter whether you have magic or whether you don't, you can still be somebody at the top. And so I appreciated that because it was kind of like that, not a friendship power up as much as it was a stakes power up of it's not just about me, bro. I can't give up because they're tearing me down and beating me up constantly. I gotta tough it out for the rest of the people who are just like me.
No, that was a really good one. I'm
Yeah,
glad you brought that one up.
yeah, it's definitely not one I mean, I've heard of, but I don't think I've watched.
Yeah, like I said, it's very etchy. It is exceptionally etchy, and it is TVMA. So there's probably I have not seen it in years. So there's probably nudity and probably a lot of fan service, but like especially now as an adult, if I come to find it a lot easier to ignore the nudity and the fan service and to see what the show is actually giving me narratively. And I was pleasantly surprised even as a kid when I saw those etchy 14-year-old, like, wait, this actually has like a lot of good narrative storytelling going on in here.
Is that why you watched Monster Girls?
Initially, actually, as a kid, yeah, I watched Monster Girls at 13, and that was actually why I watched it. I saw that there was a bunch of, I was like, oh Lord. I mean, I kind of thought they were pretty when I was a little kid, but I was like, there's still so much. And then I kind of started appreciating the relationships they had. And but then they kept like they didn't like denounce said relationships, but they were pushing that etchy part really hard, bro. They were pushing it
Well,
so
they
egregiously.
did it in a jokingly way.
They definitely did it jokingly where you could laugh at it. And it was like, bro, oh my God, man. But it wasn't like bad. It wasn't as bad as some shows are.
Oh no, it skirts the line. Like there are some moments where you're like, ooh, and then you're some like, oh, they're just making fun of this. They're
I
like
think the
they're
biggest skirt moment for me, there was two. It was when they actually fell into the whole slime girl thing,
oh,
like the fetish part, and then when we first met the harpy girl. That felt a little weird to me because I felt like that was a child, and the harpy acted like a child, and I was like, I'm uncomfortable.
aren't they all tiles technically?
No, they're all the two. I think the only two that are children are the harpy and the slime, because the slime was that obviously freaking born not even a couple days ago, and the harpy was definitely a child. No matter how you looked at it, I don't care whether you want to give me some. Well, technically, harpies, no, 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 no. It was a child, but the rest of them, the snake, the spider, the horse, those were all. I could very much be okay with saying that those were all adults enough.
Oh, I feel like the spider was the only one that was an adult.
Mentally, 100% the spider, yes. But I say adult enough as in I could say they were all that the rest were born or 18 and it's still acting like teenagers. That's what I mean by that. Where it's adult enough to where I'm not looking at it and like you're trying to give me borderline porn of a literal child, but in the sense of, hey, I know that technically the age of consent and where you can both get a job in your own apartment in Japan at that time was 14. It's 16 now, but at the time it was 14. So for cultural views, I can excuse some things, still not be okay with it morally, but excuse it in some extent. So that's what I meant by adult enough to say I could see these people as being 17, 18 and be fine with it. Just or more so just not be bothered by it. But the actual adult, yes, was more than likely just the spider. Like the actual with the adult mentality was the spider, even if she was having pleasure from torturing the children in a non-painful way.
I mean, sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. You know what I'm
And I end off my statement there.
Hey
saying?
yo.
I don't know why. I'm still surprised that I can't. I know a lot of people look at a show like that's just porn, and I think I look at it and there's so many shows I've forgotten that had like I watched New Game, No Game, No Life a couple years ago, rewatched it. I was like, wow, bro, some of these lines are crazy.
Well, she was trying to sleep with her brother.
That and it was also weird because it was
Yeah.
like I had ignored all of that as a kid. I had just completely tuned it out. And like in the first freaking episode, they show us they show us with her using her feet to play the game, but instead of just showing that, they showed her panties. And I was like, bro, hey yo, I did not remember it being that bad at all. So like I guess that shows how much I just very much completely threw it out the window, just disregarded it as a whole.
So
Because that
in
was
Monster Musume, the youngest is 17 and the oldest is in their 30s technically.
see that makes see that's
Oh,
that
16.
was
Sorry, 16
okay.
is the
That
youngest.
those are the vibes I was getting. I'm pretty sure the snake girl is the one who's 16. Like that's the one that makes that those numbers make sense to me. Not to say that I ever look at those characters, and especially now in that in a weird like sexual way, but because was watching the show at 14, I could easily excuse like okay, it's just whatever. Especially in America, how many TV shows we have where we're depicting 16-year-olds doing all kind of stuff.
Oh God. I
Euphoria. What's that? Ginny in Georgia.
well, and then that freaking
Do y'all not remember
cheerleader
Degrassi?
movie. Oh, Degrassi.
They were actual kids doing. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, that's high school because I mean we was all clapping cheeks in high school, but you know,
There's a point where there's a point where you do it for for factuality, when there's a point where you do it because you're
I,
weird.
I
Like
mean,
you can
Degrassi didn't
allude to
show
it.
anything though.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah. You can as long as you allude. I haven't seen the show, but as long as you allude to
We're
the
watching
idea,
Degrassi. We're watching Degrassi.
I'm sorry. I like legitimately ever since I started watching anime when I was in middle school. Well, whenever I started realizing it was anime, because I had always been watching anime from all my life. I just did not know about it. Um, I had kind of started straying away from Western television, not because it wasn't good, but because at one point in between then and now, it became very readable, obvious, and predictable.
But
Mm.
Degrassi started in like 2000. Well, technically there was Degrassi Middle School, which I don't care about, but the one that's Degrassi Next Generation is the one I like. That started like 2000.
Like
I think,
2000 even. That's probably
yeah,
why I don't.
Hmm.
That's probably why I don't even know about it.
yeah,
'Cause
it's like
remember,
2000.
I was born 3 years after that.
See, so you
Good
should have been
God.
on the third year. You should have been able to watch it from the time you were born. You could have
Oh, that was like
First
one of
words
the
were
I was proud of
that.
Degrassi.
it.
That's where Drake came from. How did you not know about Aubrey Graham, aka Wheelchair Jimmy?
I didn't listen to Drake. I still don't listen to Drake.
To think like that happens in like the second season is so wild to me because I thought it was so much later in the series when he actually ends up in the wheelchair.
Wow. But
Yeah,
no,
no, I
yeah,
remember learning about that. It threw me off completely.
I can
That
imagine.
show is amazing. I love Degrassi. Like I went and rewatched from the Next Generation all the way to the Netflix one, which is like
Mm.
6 years because it has our original group going through graduation and some college, while the next group's coming in. Actually, it might be 8 years. So I think it's no, it's three graduating classes, so it's 12 years technically. Now that I think about it, but I don't think they actually showed the third group and technically graduate. But it was actually really, really good, and there's a lot of great, I guess, social dynamics and understanding. Because I mean, the show is based to young adults or teens, pretty much, and trying to understand how, like, what you're going through is sometimes normal, but it also goes in depth of a lot of, situations that do happen in high school, like people getting pregnant, people killing
Yeah. What
themselves,
do you mean high school? That happened
stuff.
in middle school for me.
Yeah, like stuff like that happening,
Mm.
and like it was a really good. I think it's one of the best
I think
shows
there's
for that for the group that is like aimed towards is a perfect show of explaining things that may or may not happen. Obviously, it's dramatic for
it
some
has to be its
sensitive,
television.
but a lot of it is hits really close to home because it's like, oh, I went through that, or I know somebody who's went through that, or I've heard of something like that in my town, like something like stuff like that. Like it's really, really close to home. So we're gonna watch that after we watch the Fast and Furious with Creed.
Oh
Yeah.
God.
I'll
you're not
definitely
you're
have
not
to
off the hook. You're not off the hook yet.
I'll definitely have to look
Yeah, I
I'll
figured.
definitely have to look more into it. I think there's only one Western show that I will always won't I always think about and think of fondly, and that's Heroes.
Oof.
Like Heroes.
Oh, I know what you were talking about with Hayden Panettiere.
Yeah, that one,
It's
man.
Zachary Quinto.
Like I knew it started falling off slightly towards the end.
Slightly. That thing hit a cliff and just kept going. Like
Yeah,
they
it
they
did.
ru- they rushed it so bad,
Yeah,
and it
they
was
did.
such a
They
good
did.
show.
It was such a really good show. Like it was genuinely, and I think that show came out around the time that I was being born. Was it not? Was it either 2003 or 2009?
It might be like 2005 to be honest.
That sounds
Okay.
about
Because I
right.
feel like I was either in middle school or about to start high school. So let's see, Heroes TV show. Watches Obi-Wan.
2006.
Like I said,
Okay.
about 2005. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
not
yeah,
that far off.
that was the only show that I had actually like Western television show that I had been watching with my uncle that wasn't secretly an anime. When I was, because like I said, I have been watching anime since I was 4 or 5, but I didn't know it was anime because I was watching with my uncle. So it was just like Power Rangers or other things like that that have stems of anime and things like that, or an influence, and so I just never knew. And so, but one of the only shows that I remember watching with him that I can remember as of now that were, firstly, I wasn't supposed to be watching. Secondly, that was Western was Heroes. It's one of those. It's just one of those shows that, even thinking back on it, there are scenes that are like have been permanently kept as images in my brain, especially that one spider evolution scene. Oh my goodness, where that man cocooned everybody, ate him, and then cocooned himself, and then had his own personal evolution. I'm like, bro, what is going on right now?
You know what? Honestly, mood.
He said, I'm gonna eat y'all, then I'm gonna take a fat little nap and evolve too.
Exactly. Have you not experienced the wonderfulness of the itis?
The itis, the itis when talking about cannibalism is insane.
I mean, it fills you up really good.
It fills you up really good.
Hey, if it falls off the phone, off the bone, what can you
What can you do?
You're
Well, we
looking good.
appreciate y'all. This was surprisingly it was surprisingly a lot more. We had surprisingly a lot more different um protagonists than I thought it was gonna be. Like it was everything was like very much,
Varied.
yeah, exceptionally varied at that.
Except you
do?
guys had one of them that was the
Yeah, only
same.
one of them was the same. It was
Yeah.
Good and Log and Simon.
I could have trolled and said Luffy, but I didn't want to do that.
Luffy
Like
doesn't even
that's
believe in
why
his own goals. He wants to be king of the pirates, but literally hates what pirates are.
it's funny because it's like I wanted to say like I made those limiters on purpose because I wanted to say Ichigo but it's I wanted to challenge myself. This was a personal thing for me. I wanted to challenge myself to choose not my typical, four people off the list. I wanted to dive a little bit deeper. That's also really the reason I thought of Skate the Infinity because I probably would have never like thought about it as my Mount Rushmore until I had to force myself to really look into it and say, this was pretty darn because like the story is itself, like it doesn't have good rewatchability wise. You can maybe rewatch it a secondary time, but after that second time, you've pretty much know everything that's gonna happen because it's a light novel. It's a LN, it's only 13 episodes.
Mhm.
But it is definitely one of those shows that when you see it for that first time and you really look at what it's giving, it's pretty darn good.
I mean, like I said, I had three honorable mentions because I felt like they could have taken the spot of somebody else on the list, but I had to put Ichigo up there because, like I said, he probably is my favorite for the standard of protagonists being able to sort of follow the exact same standards, but put a twist on them and make them different than what you already know.
Yeah, it's definitely
Um,
valid.
but since we can't do honorable mentions, I had to solidify my list. Um, you know, just following the rules that Creed set for us.
Yeah. And actually, let me think. The time currently. Oh yeah, it's currently 11 o'clock. It's 11:01 for you guys. So
Yep, it's time to go to bed.
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
Um,
we can end it off there.
but hold on. Next one, is your anime posse. So you and three anime characters that run the streets.
That run the streets.
Well, not run the streets, but you're three guys that how there's always the protagonist and then the three, um, I guess dualities or just the three people in the group that round them out that would be your posse. So like Yusuke has Kurama Hiei and
Yeah.
Kuwabara, and Ichigo has Chad, Uryu, and Orihime.
Can we make one of some people in our posse a protagonist?
Yeah, it's just three. It just says three other
Okay,
anime
just three.
characters.
Got you, got you. Okay, that's perfect.
Mhm.
I literally already have.
Me and my villain mentality already.
I already have three straight ones already off rip.
So I'm gonna. I ain't want to run the streets. So me and my crew.
I
I am
will
the posse.
I am the
for a
posse.
preview of mine for next time. Do not be surprised, viewers, if my posse is a bunch of pacifists who don't like being bothered, but will choke you out in a heartbeat.
All I'm saying is my three are Black Tims. That's all I'm saying.
I can already
I
sell
listen.
Kid Boo's in there.
Oh, facts. Easily.
Listen, I like peace, y'all. I like the idea of just living off the land, bro. That's my dream. So it's probably gonna be some people similar to that. But again,
There ain't
please
no
don't
land
bother
where
us
I'm
if
at.
we
We
there's
blowing
no
we blowing
land
up
where I'm
we're
at.
blowing up the earth. If anything goes wrong, hey, boo's doing this. Once you see that, it's over.
He
Because
said if anything goes wrong,
yeah,
boo-hoo.
boo, yeah, exactly.
Man, shit, I gotta think about this for my list.
I think I'm gonna do a villain one and I guess a hero one. So because if I just do straight villains, it's easy. It's OD.
But aren't you worried about like I don't know, getting like double crossed low key? We'll save it for next time. We'll save it for next episode. We'll save it for next episode.
Double crossed by these dudes. Nah, all they want to do is throw hands.
Boo just want to eat. He just want to live.
That's what I mean. Like, what happens
No,
if Boo eats?
Majin Buu wants to eat. Kid Buu
Well,
just
yeah,
wants to
Oh,
eat.
okay, yeah.
Kid Boo just wants to see the
Let's
world
say, yeah,
burn.
you
He
gotta pick right.
blew up the earth, went to heaven to run the fade
He
on
said, "I'm
everybody.
not done yet.
Yeah, I don't think there's ever been another villain that's like, you know what? Yeah,
I'm
everybody's
going to
dead,
heaven to
but
come fight you more."
I wanted the afterlife to see if you can still get this fade.
He's like, I ain't hear no bell.
Your Tata shit was sweet just
He
because you
said,
weren't here
"I
no
didn't
more.
hear the heaven bells ring. Come back here."
And the fact that he got into heaven to begin with is also like,
Yeah, that's
yo, that's crazy. Like this man really went to the afterlife, went into the spiritual realm, and run the fade on everybody.
Mm-mm-mm.
completely
Well,
wild.
that and like everyone from hell just watching the fight.
What are they gonna
Man,
do? get the fade run on them too?
Oh no, it was just the
It's like,
fact that like it got to the point where literally everyone in the hell was just like, damn, that's a menace.
yeah, like they're like,
Even
That's big
Cell and
time.
Frieza were just
oh,
like, damn.
because Frieza's nobody. Frieza's trash.
All right, we'll
Yeah.
get into it next episode. Thank you guys so very much. We appreciate y'all. Hopefully you guys appreciate this slightly shorter episode. Let us again keep giving us feedback. We appreciate it greatly, and much love to y'all.
Peace out. Thank you guys for the support. As always, go watch a new anime. Go watch a new anime. Or one of the ones we recommended. Anything, Creed? Nothing? No final
No,
words?
just make sure to, follow, like, subscribe, listen to us on all of our platforms, Instagram, TikTok, X/Twitter. We have Spotify that we're on, Google Podcasts as well, Apple Podcasts.
I believe so.
And then was there one
YouTube.
more?
YouTube?
YouTube. Yes, the most important.
The one we're running a video for?
But yeah, make sure to give us the support and just let us know what you think, what you guys want us to see more of from us, or what you want to see less of, probably my rambling. But otherwise, yeah, just let us know what you think and we'll just roll with it.
All right. Peace out.
Peace out, everybody.
Oni-chan.
Oh
Oh my
God.
god.